The violent shaking of the research vessel threw Commander Sarah Chen against her safety harness as alarms blared through the cabin. Red warning lights flashed across her control panels, casting an eerie glow over her dark hair and determined features. The electromagnetic storm had appeared out of nowhere, its purple-tinged clouds enveloping her small ship before she could plot an escape course. Warning: critical system failure, the ship's AI announced in its emotionless voice. Emergency landing protocols engaged. Sarah's fingers flew across the controls, her years of training kicking in despite the fear building in her chest. Through the view screen, she could see the surface of planet KX-227 rushing up to meet her. The world was a mess of sharp rocky outcrops and deep valleys, with patches of strange blue vegetation scattered across its barren landscape. Come on," she muttered, fighting to keep the nose up as the ship plummeted through the atmosphere. The hull temperature was rising dangerously fast, and she could smell something burning in the engine compartment. The impact, when it came, was both better and worse than she expected. Better because she survived. Worse because the ship broke apart on landing, scattering her precious research equipment across half a kilometer of rocky ground. Sarah hung limply in her harness for several moments, checking herself for injuries. Besides some bruises and a cut on her forehead, she seemed intact. After running a quick diagnostic on her environment suit, Sarah carefully made her way out of the wreckage. The planet's purple sky stretched endlessly above her, while strange rock formations created eerie shadows in the dim light of the system's distant sun. Her suit's sensors immediately began analyzing the atmosphere, displaying the results on her helmet's heads-up display. Oxygen present but contaminated with toxic compounds, she read aloud, a habit she'd developed during her years of solar research missions. Temperature: 32 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure: higher than Earth normal, but within tolerable ranges. A sudden flash of light in the sky caught her attention. Another ship was entering the atmosphere, its descent just as uncontrolled as hers had been. Sarah watched in horror as the vessel, clearly not of human design, carved a fiery path through the purple clouds before crashing about 2 kilometers from her position. Her scientific curiosity warred with caution. The logical choice would be to secure her own crash site first, but what if someone needed help? After a moment's hesitation, Sarah grabbed her emergency medical kit and began making her way toward the second crash site. The alien ship was unlike anything she'd seen before. Its hull seemed to be made of some kind of crystalline material that had partially shattered on impact. As she approached, a panel in the side suddenly burst outward, and a tall figure emerged. Sarah froze. The being before her was humanoid but clearly alien. Its skin appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as the ship, with a faintly bluish tinge that seemed to pulse with inner light. It wore some kind of environmental suit, but parts of it had been damaged in the crash. The alien turned toward her, and Sarah found herself staring into eyes that looked like swirling pools of silver. Recognition flickered in those strange eyes. Clearly, this being knew what humans were. "Meridian," Sarah whispered, remembering her xenobiology briefings, a species known for their advanced technology and complete suppression of emotions, believing feelings to be an evolutionary weakness. The Meridian spoke, its translator converting its crystalline tones into English. "Human. This encounter is unfortunate. I am Scout Vothar, and we have approximately 47 minutes before the first acid storm of the day arrives." Sarah's eyes widened as she looked up at the darkening purple sky. The distant sun's light was being blotted out by approaching clouds that seemed to writhe and pulse with dangerous energy. Their situation had just gone from bad to much worse. "We need to move. Now." Vothar's translated voice carried no emotion, but his crystalline body pulsed with a faint red glow that caught Sarah's attention. The acid storm clouds rolled closer, their edges crackling with purple lightning. Sarah pointed to a rocky outcrop about half a kilometer away. "There. I saw cave openings when I was coming down." She started gathering whatever supplies she could carry from her medical kit. Vothar moved with surprising speed for his tall frame, efficiently collecting items from his own crashed ship. His movements suddenly stopped as he stared at his ship's broken hull. The emergency beacon. I must retrieve it. Before Sarah could protest, Vathar had climbed back into his wrecked vessel. The first drops of acid rain began to fall, sizzling where they hit the ground. Sarah's suit sensors screamed warnings as tiny droplets struck her helmet, leaving small marks on the protective coating. "Vathar," she shouted, "we're out of time." The Meridian emerged clutching a glowing device, but as he jumped down, a sharp piece of crystalline hull sliced through his environmental suit. He stumbled, his silver eyes widening in what could only be pain, though his face remained eerily calm. Without thinking, Sarah rushed forward. "Put your arm around me," she ordered, tucking herself under his shoulder to support his weight. His crystalline skin felt strangely warm through her suit. They half ran, half stumbled toward the caves as the acid rain began falling harder. Each step was a battle against time, with Vathar growing heavier against her side. The cave entrance loomed ahead, just as a bolt of purple lightning struck behind them, the thunder almost knocking them off their feet. Finally, they'd reached the safety of the cave. Sarah helped Vathar sit against a wall before sealing the entrance with an emergency force field from her survival kit. The barrier hummed to life just as the full force of the storm hit, its transparent surface rippling as acid rain struck it. "Your assistance was unexpected," Vathar said, his voice steady despite the blue-tinted liquid seeping from his wound. "Most species avoid close contact with meridians." Sarah was already opening her medical kit. "Well, most species haven't taken xenobiology as their life's work. Now, let me see that cut." Vathar watched with those silver eyes as she examined his injury. "Our biology is incompatible with your medical knowledge." "Maybe," Sarah replied, studying the strange way his crystalline skin had splintered around the wound. "But basic first aid principles usually apply. The cut needs to be cleaned and sealed, no matter what you're made of." As she worked, she noticed something fascinating. Wherever her gloved hands touched Vathar's skin, tiny pulses of light rippled outward, like ripples in a pond. His natural glow had also changed from red to a softer purple color. "Does it hurt when I do this?" she asked, gently probing near the wound. "Meridians do not experience pain as humans do," Vathar responded automatically. Then, after a pause, he added more quietly, "But, yes, it is uncomfortable." Sarah smiled. "See, not so different after all." She applied a flexible sealant patch over the cut. "This should hold until your natural healing takes over." Vathar flexed his arm, testing the repair. "Your methods are unorthodox but effective." He looked at the storm raging outside their force field. "The acid rain will continue for approximately 6 hours. We are trapped here together. Then we might as well make the best of it," Sarah said, settling down nearby. "Tell me about your people. Real things, not just what's in our diplomatic briefings." Vathar was silent for so long that Sarah thought he wouldn't answer. But then he spoke, his voice softer than before. "What would you like to know?" Outside, the storm raged on, but in their small cave sanctuary, something unexpected was beginning to form. A connection that would soon challenge everything both of them had been taught to believe. Hours passed in the cave as Sarah and Vathar shared stories about their worlds. The acid storm continued outside, but its violent sounds had become almost peaceful background noise. Vathar's wound was healing, his crystalline skin slowly repairing itself with a faint shimmer. "So your people chose to remove emotions?" Sarah asked, fascinated by how Vathar's body continued to glow different colors despite his claims of emotional suppression. Right now, he was giving off a soft blue light. "Not removed. Controlled," Vathar corrected, then winced suddenly, pressing a hand to his chest. "The implants help us maintain focus." Sarah noticed his discomfort. "Are you okay? Is it the wound?" "No," Vathar said, his voice strained. "The suppression implant. It sometimes causes discomfort when. He trailed off, his glow pulsing between blue and violet. Sarah moved closer, her scientific curiosity mixed with genuine concern. When what? When experiencing strong M, Vathar stopped abruptly, his silver eyes widening as Sarah's hand accidentally brushed his arm. Where she touched him, his crystalline skin erupted in bright swirls of color. They both stared at the reaction. "That's impossible," Vathar whispered. "Our biology doesn't respond to other species." Sarah pulled out her portable scanner, her excitement growing. "May I?" When Vathar nodded, she began taking readings. "Your crystalline structure is actually changing at a molecular level where I touched you. It's like your body is trying to remember something." "That cannot be correct," Vathar insisted, but his voice held a note of uncertainty she hadn't heard before. "Our evolution removed such responses generations ago." Sarah shook her head, studying the readings. "Evolution doesn't work that fast. Unless—" She looked up at him sharply. "Unless it wasn't evolution at all." Before Vathar could respond, they heard a rumbling from deeper in the cave. The ground shook slightly, causing small rocks to fall from the ceiling. "We should investigate," Vathar said, standing carefully, "if these caves are unstable." Sarah nodded, gathering her equipment. As they moved deeper into the cave system, she noticed something strange. The walls weren't natural. They were too smooth, too regular. "Vathar," she called out, shining her light on the surface. "Look at these markings." The Meridian ran his fingers over the carved symbols, his body glowing brighter with excitement despite his attempt to remain detached. "These are ancient Meridian scripts. But that's impossible. We never had colonies this far from our home system." Sarah's light revealed more carvings ahead, and they followed them deeper into the cave. The passage opened into a large chamber that took their breath away. The walls were covered in murals showing crystalline beings, ancient Meridians, but they were different from modern ones. Their bodies blazed with colors, and they were interacting with other species, including what looked like primitive humans. "They're expressing emotions," Sarah whispered. "Look at their colors, just like yours when you—" She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. Vathar stood frozen, staring at the murals. His whole body had begun to glow with increasing intensity. "When I'm near you," he finished her sentence, his voice barely audible. "These images, they suggest our species once." Suddenly, Vathar doubled over in pain, his glow flickering wildly. The suppression implant in his chest was pulsing with an angry red light. "Vathar!" Sarah rushed to his side, supporting him as he struggled to stay upright. Where her hands touched him, calm blue waves spread through his crystalline skin, fighting against the red pulses from the implant. "Something is wrong," he gasped. "The implant, it's not supposed to." "Sarah, I think I'm—" His silver eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw a raw emotion in them. Fear, confusion, and something else that made her own heart beat faster. The ground shook again, harder this time, but neither of them moved. They stood locked in that moment, both realizing that they had stumbled upon something that would change everything they thought they knew about their species. Sarah supported Vathar's trembling form as the suppression implant continued its angry pulsing. Her mind raced with both worry and scientific possibilities. The chamber's ancient murals seemed to watch them, their crystalline figures frozen in expressions of emotion that modern Meridians claimed impossible. "We need to get you stabilized," Sarah said, helping Vathar sit against a wall. She pulled out her medical scanner again, focusing it on the implant. "The device is overheating. Your body's trying to reject it." Vathar's breathing was ragged, his crystalline skin flickering between colors. "That's not possible. The implants are permanent. They're installed at birth." His silver eyes closed in pain. Unless they were never meant to be permanent," Sarah finished, her eyes widening as she studied the scanner's results. "Vathar, this implant, It's not just suppressing your emotions. It's suppressing your entire species' natural biology. The ground shook again, stronger this time. Dust and small rocks fell from the ceiling, but Sarah barely noticed. She was too focused on the readings before her. "Look at this," she said, showing him the scanner's display. "Your crystalline structure is actually fighting against the implant. It's like your body is trying to remember its natural state. And it's happening faster when I'm near you." Vathar stared at the readings, his scientific training warring with generations of cultural conditioning. "Our government says the implants protect us, that emotions made us vulnerable, unstable. But these murals tell a different story," Sarah said, gesturing to the ancient images. "Your ancestors weren't unstable. They were vibrant, connected. They could interact with other species without pain." She hesitated, then added softly, "Like you're doing with me." As if to prove her point, Vathar's skin erupted in swirls of color where her hand rested on his arm. The sensation seemed to travel through his entire body, fighting against the implant's harsh red pulses. "There's more," Sarah said, moving her scanner to the chamber walls. "These aren't just decorated caves. This whole structure, it's artificial. Some kind of ancient research facility." She traced the symbols with her fingers. "These equations, they're about biological compatibility between species." Vathar managed to stand, drawn to the equations despite his pain. "These formulas, they're about conscious evolution, about choice." His voice grew stronger as he read more. "Our ancestors weren't trying to suppress emotions. They were studying how to safely share them with other species." Another tremor rocked the chamber, this one strong enough to knock Sarah off balance. Vathar caught her instinctively, and where their bodies touched, his crystalline skin blazed with brilliant colors. The implant gave an angry surge, but this time Vathar didn't flinch. "The implants," he said, his voice filled with a new understanding. "They're not protection. They're control. Our government didn't want us connecting with other species because it would reveal the truth," Sarah finished. "That meridians are naturally empathic beings. Your crystalline structure doesn't just store information. It stores and shares emotions." Vathar looked down at her, his silver eyes now showing clear emotion despite the implant's attempts to suppress it. "When I'm with you, I feel everything. It should be impossible. It should be frightening. But instead," the chamber shook violently, interrupting the moment. Large cracks appeared in the ceiling, and the ancient facility's support structures groaned. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said urgently. "But Vathar, what we've discovered, it changes everything about what we thought we knew about human-meridian relations." "Yes," Vathar agreed, his voice stronger despite the implant's continued resistance. "But first we must survive." He looked at the crumbling chamber around them. "And I believe our ancient friends have one more secret to share before this place collapses." Together, they rushed deeper into the facility, following a new set of glowing symbols that had begun to pulse in response to Vathar's presence. Behind them, the chamber started to cave in, but ahead, something waited that would change both their species forever. Sarah and Vathar raced through the collapsing tunnels, following the trail of glowing symbols that seemed to respond to Vathar's presence. His crystalline body was now pulsing with waves of color that lit their way better than Sarah's emergency lamp. There, Sarah pointed ahead to a circular doorway covered in more ancient meridian writing. As they approached, the symbols began to glow in response to Vathar, just like the others. Vathar pressed his hand against the door, and it slid open with a grinding sound that echoed through the shaking facility. They rushed inside just as the tunnel behind them collapsed. "Oh my God," Sarah breathed, staring at what lay before them. The chamber was perfectly preserved, its walls lined with crystalline technology that hummed with life. In the center stood a large circular platform surrounded by pillars of light. "This is..." Vathar's voice trailed off as he approached the platform. His implant was pulsing frantically now, but he seemed barely aware of its pain. "This is a transformation chamber." They're mentioned in our oldest legends, but all were supposedly destroyed. Sarah's scanner was going crazy with readings. These energy signatures, they're similar to your implant, but reversed. Instead of suppressing your crystalline structure's natural state, they're trying to enhance it. Before Vathar could respond, his implant suddenly sent out a violent pulse that brought him to his knees. Sarah rushed to his side, but this time her touch didn't seem to help calm the reaction. "Something's wrong," he gasped. "The implant, it's fighting against. The chamber's technology began to pulse in rhythm with Vathar's crystalline skin. Each pulse grew stronger, and with each wave, the red glow of his implant grew weaker. "Vathar," Sarah said urgently, reading her scanner. "Your natural biology is reasserting itself. The chamber is accelerating the process we saw before. Your body is trying to transform back to its original state." Vathar's silver eyes met hers, filled with both fear and something deeper. "Sarah, if this happens, everything will change. I'll feel everything." Sarah took his hand, watching as colors swirled from the point of contact. "You already do. You just couldn't admit it before." The chamber's lights grew blindingly bright. Vathar's whole body began to glow with an intensity that forced Sarah to shield her eyes. She could feel his hand trembling in hers as decades of artificial suppression fought against millions of years of natural evolution. Then, with a sound like crystal chimes, Vathar's implant went dark. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Vathar gasped, and his crystalline body erupted in a dazzling display of colors Sarah had never seen before. Blues, purples, greens, and golds swirled across his skin in patterns that seemed to dance with their own life. "Sarah," his voice was different now, filled with emotion he no longer tried to hide. "I can feel everything. Not just emotions, but connections. To this place, to our past, too." He looked at their joined hands, where the colors swirled most intensely. "To you." Sarah watched in amazement as the colors from Vathar's skin began to reflect in the air around them, creating a soft aurora of light. Her scanner showed his crystalline structure had completely reconfigured itself, returning to what must have been its natural state. "The legends were true," Vathar said softly, reaching out to touch her face with his free hand. Where his fingers brushed her cheek, tiny sparkles of light danced between them. "We weren't meant to be isolated. We were meant to connect, to share, to..." He stopped, overwhelmed by the new sensations. Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she watched emotions play across his face, his skin changing colors with each new feeling. "How does it feel?" Vathar's answer was to pull her closer, his body glowing with a deep gold light that filled the chamber, like finally waking up from a very long dream. But their moment of wonder was interrupted by a new sound, the distinctive hum of a ship's engines from above. Someone had found them. The sound of the ship grew louder overhead as Sarah and Vathar exchanged worried looks. His crystalline body, still glowing with newfound emotions, pulsed with flashes of anxious yellow. "It's a Meridian rescue vessel," Vathar said, his silver eyes now showing clear fear. "They must have detected my emergency beacon." The chamber's ceiling trembled as the ship landed above. Sarah quickly checked her scanner. "We've got multiple life signs approaching. All Meridian." Vathar's glow dimmed slightly. "Sarah, you don't understand. They can't find me like this. When a Meridian shows signs of emotional awakening, they're immediately taken for reconditioning." His voice cracked on the last word. "They erase everything. Memories, feelings, identity. That's not going to happen," Sarah said firmly, squeezing his hand. His skin swirled with purple and blue where she touched him. "We have proof now. The ancient chamber, the murals, your transformation. It shows your people's true nature." Heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnels leading to their chamber. Vathar's body flickered between colors as he struggled with his decision. "Commander Chen." A cold voice filled the chamber as 3 Meridian officials entered, their crystalline bodies a uniform gray, unchanged by emotion. Their leader, marked by decorative patterns in his crystalline skin, stepped forward. Step away from the compromised subject. Sarah stayed exactly where she was. Chief Administrator Revan, I presume. Your compromised subject has a name, and he's living proof that your entire society is based on a lie. Revan's face remained expressionless, but his gray surface rippled slightly, a crack in the perfect control. This is not your concern, human. Subject Vathar requires immediate medical attention. His implant has malfunctioned, causing dangerous instability. Instability. Vathar's voice rang out, his body blazing with bright colors. Look at me, Revan. Really look. This is what we were meant to be. What you've taken from our people. He gestured to the ancient chamber around them. Our ancestors built this place to study emotional connections between species. They saw it as evolution, not weakness. The other officials shifted uncomfortably as Vathar's colors seemed to resonate with their own suppressed crystalline structures. Revan noticed and stepped forward aggressively. Enough. Security protocol demands immediate containment of compromised subjects. If the human resists, she will be contained as well. You can't hide the truth forever, Sarah said, pulling out a small device. I've already recorded everything we found. The ancient writings, the transformation chamber, Vathar's natural state. Your own people will see. Our people, Revan interrupted coldly, will see what we tell them to see. What they need to see to maintain order. He raised his hand, and the other officials drew weapons. Vathar suddenly moved in front of Sarah, his crystalline body glowing with intense protective red. No, I won't let you hurt her, and I won't let you erase me again. Again. Sarah whispered, realization dawning. Vathar, have you awakened before? Vathar's colors swirled with sad blues, fragments of memories, dreams I couldn't explain. They've done this to me before, haven't they, Revan? The chief administrator's perfect control slipped for a moment, showing a flash of color. 3 times. You've always been problematic. But this time, your corruption has gone too far. The only corruption here is what you've done to your own people, Sarah said, her voice shaking with anger. She held up her scanner. And now we have proof. Revan smiled coldly. Proof requires witnesses, Commander Chen, and I'm afraid there won't be any. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Vathar's body erupted in a blinding flash of light that filled the entire chamber. Sarah felt his hand grasp hers tightly as ancient machinery around them hummed to life. In that moment of chaos, Vathar made his choice, one that would change everything. The blinding light from Vathar's body pulsed through the ancient chamber in waves, each one more powerful than the last. The transformation chamber's crystals resonated with his energy, creating a network of light that spread through the entire facility. Impossible, Revan gasped as the light touched him. His gray crystalline surface began to crack with colors he couldn't suppress. The other officials dropped their weapons, overwhelmed by the awakening of their own natural states. Vathar stood tall, his hand still firmly holding Sarah's. You feel it, don't you? Our true nature breaking through. The connection we were meant to have. His voice was strong, filled with emotion and purpose. You can't fight it anymore. None of us can. Sarah watched in amazement as the chamber's ancient technology amplified Vathar's transformation energy. Her scanner showed the effect spreading beyond the chamber, reaching toward the surface. Vathar, she said urgently, the signal, it's broadcasting on a quantum level. It's reaching your ship above. Revan stumbled, his perfect control crumbling as colors began to swirl across his skin. No, you don't understand what you're doing. Our society, our order, was built on lies, Vathar finished. I remember everything now. Every time you erased me. Every time I found my way back to what we really are. He looked at Sarah, his silver eyes bright with emotion. Every time I discovered we were meant for more than isolation. The chamber hummed with power as more meridians from the rescue ship above began to enter, drawn by the energy. Each one that stepped into the light underwent their own transformation, their gray surfaces blooming with color and emotion. "Sarah," Vathar said softly, even as the chamber filled with awakening meridians, "what we discovered here, it's not just about emotion. It's about choice. The choice to feel, to connect, to love." Revan made one last attempt to maintain control. "The Council will never allow." "The Council won't have a choice," Sarah interrupted, checking her scanner. "The quantum signal has already reached the nearest meridian colonies. The transformation is spreading. Your people are waking up everywhere." Vathar's body glowed with a deep gold as he faced his former superior. "For generations, you told us emotion was weakness. That connection with other species would destroy us. But look around you, Revan. Look at what we really are." The chamber was now filled with transformed meridians, their crystalline bodies shimmering with colors that reflected their awakening emotions. Where there had been uniformity, now there was beautiful diversity. Where there had been silence, now there was wonder. Revan looked at his own hands, now swirling with colors he hadn't seen in decades. A single tear fell from his silver eyes. I remember. Before my first reconditioning, I remember. Feeling." Sarah stepped forward, still holding Vathar's hand. "It's not too late. Help us share the truth. Help your people choose their own path." Hours later, as the acid storm above finally cleared, Sarah stood with Vathar at the entrance of the ancient facility. The rescue ship's crew, all now transformed, worked to secure the site and its precious historical records. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, watching Vathar's colors shift with thoughtful blues and hopeful golds. "Now we build bridges instead of walls," he said, turning to face her. "The human ambassadors need to know the truth, and our people need to learn how to feel again." His skin sparkled where their hands joined. "We'll need teachers, people who understand both worlds." Sarah smiled. "Are you asking me to be your cultural liaison, Vathar?" "I'm asking you to be much more than that," he said softly, his body glowing with deep rose colors that made his meaning clear. "If you choose to." Sarah's answer was to reach up and touch his crystalline face, watching as beautiful patterns of light danced between them. Above, the purple clouds parted, revealing a sky full of possibilities for both their peoples. Their love hadn't just changed them, it had changed everything.